Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Mondays, where we talk about sales, business, entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between with guests who I truly respect and I think make a positive impact on the world around us. And today's conversation is with Marcus Chan. Marcus Chan is the CEO of Venli Consulting, where he helps sales teams discover 2 to 10 million in hidden revenue by installing revenue operations systems. His clients have generated 950 million using this framework, which is pretty damn impressive. Now, I've known Marcus for a while now. We're both on the Salesforce Insiders or Sales Blazers group, and we got to finally meet a few years back at Dreamforce, and him and I share a very similar approach to sales. A lot of it is rooted in grit and hard work. And so that's where we started with Marcus. We talked about his upbringing as an immigrant family and how he had to work, I think at 6 years old or something like that in his family's Chinese restaurant, and vowed that he never actually wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then got into school and marketing and had a similar track to me, but started to realize that he actually fought about sales. Like, I'm not in sales for a while. And then finally accepted the fact that he was. And even when he didn't really think he was in sales, he was turning companies around like Cintas, one of the worst performing groups in the organization. He turned to one of the best. And so we talked about how he did that, the frameworks that he used, how to give feedback to, because again, I think we've all gone soft these days, and feedback, direct feedback, is one of the best and only ways that we can really develop. And so how he does that, and does that, with some tact, but also without, beating around the bush too much. And we just got into a bunch of really cool conversations about managing growth. He's actually going in a slightly different direction than I am with he used to do B2C all the time, and now he's all in on B2B. I was all in on B2B forever, and now I'm kind of trying to really figure out that B2C with my new membership platform. So lots to unpack here, lots of knowledge. Hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's make it happen. Marcus Chan, welcome to the Make It Happen Monday podcast, my friend. How you doing?
Dude, John Barrows, my man. Always a pleasure, because we have the same haircut, and we're pretty direct guys too. So it's always a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good one, man. I was thinking about it. When did we actually meet? Do you remember when we actually connected the first time? Because I know it's been some years, and we're the Salesforce stuff, but I don't remember actually when we met. Do you remember that at all?
I think, let's see, we did virtual stuff for sure, right? I think it was probably during COVID time when we probably met virtually, but then I think probably Dreamforce a few years ago in person, right? Yeah.
Cool.
And it's funny because you're not the same person online that we are offline, which is great to see.
Yeah, that's
so now you see a disconnect, right?
Dude, I tell you, I was just having this conversation this morning, like, about authenticity, right? Because I'm Instagram and all this, trying to tell my story, and it was like authenticity, and I can't wrap my head around why authenticity is a differentiator. It's like a superpower, because to me it's so much harder to be full of shit.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's just
it
takes too much effort to be full of shit.
You have to remember the lies you make. Like, I tell my wife I'm a terrible liar.
Me too.
Because I just say I can't remember lies. I'm not like a liar. I just I have a poor memory.
Yeah.
Needs to be straight. Here. I don't know.
Yeah. Same here, man. Well, we're going to talk about like the direct factor and feedback, because I think that's going to be the theme of this one. I think you're seeing some of the same stuff I'm out there right now. Wrote a post recently that went wild on it. But before we get into that, Marcus, origin story, my friends. I know you got an immigrant family. You sold some cool shit. You got in. So walk us through kind of what made Marcus.
Yeah, 100%. So first off, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure as usual. But you're right. Came from an immigrant family, right? Parents came from China and Taiwan. They came from absolutely nothing during the Communist Revolution. He came to America. Nobody hired them. They started a Chinese restaurant. So I got the pleasure at the age of 5 to start working in the restaurant at a very young age. And I grew up just working my ass off, right, with them the whole time. And I remember, like, as I got older, I'm like, man, I never want to be an entrepreneur. I never want to do my own thing. This is the worst. How can I find a way to maybe like make money with my brain or my skills, right? And so when I graduated, I got into B2B sales. And this was in the last recession. So this is like 2007, right? And I grew up working hard, so I think I'd be pretty good. I wasn't. Almost got fired pretty good rapidly. Was one of the worst reps. Eventually figured it out. Had some pretty good success. Got promoted a number of different times. Ended up working for 2 Fortune 500 companies for 14 years. In my first 8 years, promoted 12 times. In my first 8 years, hit number 1 in every single role. Last role last for 4 years. Ran an org of 85 employees. We did over 200 million a year in sales every single year. Had a lot of fun doing that. Won all the awards and all that stuff. Then eventually went and started my own business in 2019. And that was scary but fun. And we dove in head first, helping directly first with AEs, helping them to crush their roles, and then scale to B2B teams. And fast forward, it's been 6 years. And man, here we are. Now we're talking.
Love it, man. Let's talk. I didn't pick this one up. What was your major in college?
I was a marketing and Chinese major.
Marketing and Chinese major. Okay. So walk me through that thought process. I know the reason I went into marketing because it was default. Because basically I went like because I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to be, right? So I was like, my first major was art, and I was like, whoa, apparently I'm not that good, right? And I can't make any money, right? Then I went into like engineering because my dad was an engineer, and nope, calculus kicked me in the right. Then science, I was like a biologist because whatever, no. And then I kind of looked at marketing. I was like, all right, this seems pretty easy, and B, it kind of combines a lot of the skills that I had. So how did you? Was it a default or was it a purposeful decision to go into marketing?
I wish I could say it was purposeful. It was not. So first off, what 17-year-old kid knows what they want to do in college? I mean, for the rest of their life, suppose I had no idea.
Ridiculous, yeah.
So like, I was actually a pretty artsy kid. I loved to draw, and my parents were like, "You should be an architect because artists are poor." Yeah, I'm like,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, good advice.
All right, that seemed to make sense.
Yeah.
So I actually went. I filled out the whole application to go to architecture school at the University of Oregon. I was actually about to turn it in, and then my parents were like, "Hey, listen, one of our customers that come to the restaurant, he's actually an architect in town, got a pretty big firm. Do you want a job? That'd be a great experience for you, and maybe you can add to your application." I'm like, that sounds great. I go and I check it out, and I realize I completely hate it. Like I thought it'd be like, late nights on the drawing board and like building stuff. No, it was all done on computers even at that time. So it was all on software. I'm like, this is not what I expected. So literally just trash the application, went in undeclared, right? And then I'm like, well, I need to probably pick something because of the pressure from my family. I'm like, well, I already speak Chinese, so I can probably learn how to read and write. So I'll probably get an easy A. So I'm like, pick that first.
Yep.
And my parents are like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I have no idea. They're like, you should probably go into business. I'm like, yeah, sure. But then I looked at business. I'm like, well, economics looks really hard. Like stats looks really hard. I'm like, finance looks really hard. I'm like, marketing looks pretty easy. Like, let me go that path. So I'm like, I guess I'll just be a marketing and Chinese major. So I had no idea what I was going to do with that, but I'm like, let's just go see what happens.
Love it, man. So then where'd you catch? Because you're even growing up, I noticed like you're a chef, you're a swim coach, you're all these different things.
Yeah.
What and the entrepreneurial gene was there, even though you might not have seen it and you probably revolted against it. When did it click that sales was like, when did you catch the sales bug? Like, ooh, this is what I like. This is what I want to do.
It actually took me a long time. So it probably took me, let me think for a second. So it probably took me about 9 years into my sales career before I realized it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't
know. Then why was it a necessity? So again, let's go similar probably stories. Like I got out into the real world with my marketing degree and I looked around going, ew, I don't want any of these fucking jobs. And by the way, none of them paid me enough to pay back my student loan, like all these type of things. So I'm like, hey, sales, I heard you can make some money in that. Let me try that shit out. Right. And then that's where I just kind of fell into that too. So what was the shift between like you graduated and then those 9 years? Talk to me about those 9 years. Cause most people, if they don't love it, those 9 years don't happen. It's like in and out in less than 2 years. Like, fuck this job. Like I can't do this. So what was the transition? And then why just stay for 9 years without loving it?
Oh yeah. So it's interesting, right? So, when I was going to school, I knew I was supposed to get an internship. I'm like, I should get internships. That's what I should do. And, when you're in like college, you have no real skills. I don't really have a focused degree. Like, I can't really get the great internship. So I'm going around at the career fair, looking around and just seeing what's out there. And the first internship that I got was at Enterprise Rent-A-Car at the time.
Nice.
Right? They had this sales and management internship.
Yep,
and I'm like,
management, right? Yeah.
Okay, this seems interesting. And I'm like, oh, cool. I get to learn how to run a business. There's sales, there's management, there's a P&L. I'm like, this sounds interesting. I'm like, let me just do it. And for me, there's this weird thing where I was so used to like literally like working at either like food festivals, like in like 100-degree heat, getting sweaty in front of a grill all day, or working in a hot restaurant. I'm like, I get to wear a shirt and tie. Wow, this is already an upgrade. I'm like, I already feel awesome, right? Now, little did I know, you're just washing cars in a shirt and tie in the hot heat now, right? But I started to learn how to like, to sell and basically sell insurance people coming in, right, and doing upgrades. But also, I learned how to run a business. So I would study the P&L with my boss and really understand operationally how they made money and how the business actually ran. And that was really interesting. And I was actually pretty good at it. So like, my first year, I went intern of the year, the high sales. I was like, even at all the full-time employees, they're like, who is this kid? Came back for a second summer because I did a 5-year program because I studied abroad and had also another BANT year. And then I'm interviewed. It's my super senior year. I'm interviewing all these different places. I really don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm like, you know what? I should probably go to these management trainee programs. They love people like me, poor kids who grew up gritty, who can work really hard and just do whatever it takes. So I started interviewing and I ended up getting like 5 different job offers. I'm like, this is kind of awesome actually. And they would range from like a 30K base, like a 60K base, from like, banks down to like, to enterprise, etc. And what was really interesting was at this point, Enterprise actually started a brand new truck division in Oregon. So it's a complete startup. And the guy overseeing it was actually the area manager who hired me as an intern. So he came to me and said, hey, listen, Marcus, we have this huge opportunity here. Like, this is a brand new market. Like, we have 0 customers. This is different than what you've been doing. No one's coming in to buy insurance upgrades. You need to go and basically help grow the business. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, you're going to be a pioneer in this and help me build it from scratch. So he really sold the vision to me, right? I got in. It's a sales job. Okay, I had no idea. But I was sold by the vision. So I wasn't like, I'm going to sales. I'm like, I tell my parents, I'm like, yeah, I turned down that 60K other job, the 50K job for this $29,500 base salary job. But you know what? I am building the future. This is exciting. My dad's like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Why didn't you go for this job? I'm like, it's not sales, Dad. It's not sales. I'm building the business. So of course it was.
Meanwhile, as you now know, everything's sales, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was like no joke. Like here's the phone book. Go dial, rip the dial. There's no training. Good luck. Go pound payment, right? So that was like how I got into it, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is really painful. And I almost quit, obviously early on because I was no good. But at the time, out of necessity, the economy started to tank. So this is like unemployment started to go up. Because 2007 time frame. This is like late summer now at this point. Businesses are literally physically closing doors, right? I had a physical territory, so I'd be like, this building's boarded up. This building's boarded up. I can literally see all these like foreclosed homes. I'm like, this is scary. I'm like, if I quit now, what am I going to do? Move back home? Like, I don't want to do that. So I kind of just sucked it up and eventually figured out had success with it. And then got the opportunity for the next several years, started getting promoted where I would sell. I had my own number and had to lead a team. So I got to do both. And still, again, I wouldn't admit I was in sales. Eventually I changed to a different company called Cintas Corporation, which they sell like facility services, uniform, first aid, that type of stuff, right? Pretty big company. And there's actually a 2-step demotion back into sales. So I got kind of burnt out by leadership for a little bit, but also because it was also a very operational role. So we had to take everything from cradle to the grave. It was like we had to sell new accounts, bring them in, grow the account, and manage the account. So like over time, like we sold so much business that we were stuck with all this maintenance on the back end and account managing. So it went from like 100% new business to like maybe 10% new business and 9% like retention and growing. A good problem to have, but I hated it. I'm like, I love the hunting part. I just like, I didn't, so again, I wasn't willing to admit as a sales role, but I'm like, let me just like take a couple steps back, go to a different company, better comp structure, upper mobility, and let me kind of see what I can do from there, right? Still wasn't really like, didn't really want to say I was in sales or anything like that, all right? Ended up sticking out for another, several years, right? Another like almost 10 years, right? Getting promoted up, right? And it's interesting because during this whole time, right, I'm getting promoted up. We're breaking records, we're hitting patents, we're doing all these things. And I still wasn't really willing to admit I was in sales. Like, for instance, you're at a wedding, so what do you do? I didn't say I'm in sales. I wasn't willing to admit that, right? I'm like, oh, like I help businesses do this, trying to posture or go by title, right? But it was about 9 years in at that point. And by the way, I didn't realize I was decent at sales, right? I just worked really hard. I'm like, I just have this like level of work ethic that I think most people are just not working hard. And, I'm willing to figure it out. I'm willing to fail forward. But about 9 years in, people started asking me, they say, hey, listen, like, how did you generate these results? Like, how have you basically won in every single role? How do you keep getting promoted? How do you keep like, you're coming in new territories? You're like, we're not really used to seeing this, like how do you do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I just work really, really hard. Right. And at that point, I started to realize, there were certain things that I was doing that people just were not doing. They just were not effective at doing, and they didn't have a good tolerance for pain. And I realized by being able to kind of stick through it and eventually learn to love sales 9 years in was because I have a high tolerance for pain, that I'm willing to endure like basically eating shit for a long time and know there's no payoff for a long time, which is like the classic, like, go-to instinct for an entrepreneur, right? So at that point, I still wasn't willing to be, want to go into entrepreneurship, but that was for sure like these little seeds getting planted in my mind. I'm like, hey, maybe I can do something more on my own. But that's kind of how I end up sticking it through for that long.
Love it, man. And I think that, look, I have a similar track. Like DeWalt was my first job, and it wasn't sales. It was basically event marketing, but it was absolutely sales, right? I had to go around, construction sites and give away free tools and do demos and shows and stuff like that. Then I got promoted to DeWalt, to the Home Depot team. And that's where I had to take like a $10,000 order, turn it into a 50. So it was sales, but you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Xerox. And I was like, okay, this is fucking sales. Like, this is brutal.
Love copy.
But it was funny because, there was also I think I have a similar story where like work ethic. I knew I wasn't the smartest kid out there by any stretch of the imagination, but I knew I could outwork everybody. So at Xerox, when I was working, same thing, like people were blowing smoke up my ass. And I'm like, I'm just doing my job. Like you guys asked me to do this job, and this is like I don't even think I'm going extra. I'm literally just doing the job. But oh man, like everything, and it was so rare. So I was like, huh. And I remember when startups really clicked for me, because I was like, okay, I remember like, okay, apparently I'm good. So here's the job I have. Here's the next job that is after that, and then there's this job. Like that, I want that one. Like, so how fast can I get there? And they were like, well, you got 2 years to do this and 2 years of this and 2 years. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, that guy over there that you make fun of, like he's going to get the same opportunity for a promotion as I am.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, that's the way we work it. And that's why like, I didn't fit in corporate, and I didn't know why. And then when I got into startups, I was like, oh, fuck, thank God. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Let me bring you back to Cintas, because you crushed it there, right? But you weren't in sales. So I'm interested in the psychology around where your head was and what you did at Cintas, not believing you were in sales, but taking that, and then turning it into the annuity, whatever. But when you came in, what did you do different than what was previously being done? And like, what were like the top 3 things that you walked in and changed or did that were either unconventional or just not being done that allowed Cintas, you guys, I mean, I think you guys crushed it, right? Like sales
company,
team.
it's a $10 billion a year company now.
It's a top
$85 billion market cap.
But it was but I mean, wasn't it the team almost one of the worst performing sales teams?
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
how did you shift that culture? How did you shift that mentality? Not thinking even that you're in sales.
100%. So there's a few things that built up to it, right? So first off, when I joined the org, I came in as basically an AE, and I'm like, okay. And I also knew, talking to leadership, they had basically they had to really recruit me over as well. So the plan was I would go and sell, really prove I'm as good as I say I am, do for a few years, and then maybe in 2-3 years, I could then interview for a sales leadership role. You had to earn the stripes. I'm like, you know what? I'm good with that. That's fine. I'll make a bunch of money for a couple of years, and it is what it is, right? So I came in, and I already knew the culture wasn't really great. And once I joined the team, it became even more apparent, right? Because like nobody has President's Club in Portland, Oregon. We're not a big market like the Bay Area or Dallas or Miami, a bunch of excuses. And I'm like, that's totally fine. So day one, and because I had done a bunch of team turnarounds even before this, I had realized I couldn't come in there and try to be a hot shot. I had to really just basically put my money where my mouth was going to be, right? I didn't talk about a big of a game. I came in and I just started to literally execute, right? And they had certain playbooks in place. Like they were very much numbers driven, like, hey, here's a list of 100 dials, go make the dials, right? And most average reps would just kind of do that. I mean, I'll just do the extra work. I would prepare my list. I would do my research. I would make sure I came ready to go and I could just rip through my numbers. I would prioritize and tier it out. So that way, once it was my call block, I can go in the right order of my hottest ones to my coldest ones. So like, while most people just had no strategy. So I come in, they started to see me just execute the playbook in basically a slightly different way, but a better way, right? They had their discovery. I'll just run the discovery I knew how to do, which is a really deep, more complex discovery. So they see like, oh my God, like what kind of discovery is this? But they would see how I could take someone who had a latent pain and convert to active within 30 minutes. And they're like, that's interesting. And then I started to look at other things they were doing that was kind of old school. I'm like, for instance, they had presentation binders. That was a physical, this was like 2011. They had these giant physical binders they wanted people to take in and like flip through. I'm like, this is like from 1939. So I literally went and I scanned and built my own deck. I can put on an iPad, right? So I can walk into these presentations, do a killer discovery, whip out the iPad, show a kick-ass presentation, and then just run a regular real sales process. And they would seem like, oh my, like, who is this guy? So I'm this new rookie. And then whenever I do these little things, they weren't rocket science, right? Like, for instance, I had a call prep sheet that was consistent. So I prepared the same way for every call, the same way every single time. And other reps would ride with me because they were going to coach me. They're a bit more seasoned. They're like, what is that? I'm like, this makes it easier for me to take my notes, but I can come prepared. They're like, oh my God, that's a great idea. It's just these simple frameworks, right? So then as I started to obviously perform and get results, it started to build like this reputation, like, oh, but then on top of that, I would like intentionally do things that are above my role. So like once I started earning this trust of everyone, they started seeing me on the leaderboards. I would go to my leadership and I would say, hey, listen, I noticed the team seems to struggle a little bit with discovery. I have a really simple, like 8-step framework that I use in my discoveries. I would be happy to teach the team if you're open to it at our next training meet. Of course, my boss is like, that sounds great. So I would start to do these things. So naturally, intentionally positioning myself at a higher level, right? And then so people start seeing a different level. So then, of course, I would try to help people as well that were struggling a little bit, right? And then once I got promoted 9 months in, which is one of the fastest promotions in company history, and took over the team. And by the way, I was interviewing against a bunch of other people, right? But because I'd done a very similar transition many, many times, like I had a whole plan. I showed them all my proof of how I would lead the team. So hopefully I became the obvious choice. End up getting the role. And I knew I had to earn the trust of the team. So what I started to do was, first I already had like a hypothesis about how people were performing. And, my first 30 days was I was going in, I need to build trust at a deeper level because I need to perceive me a certain way. So then literally I'm really doing ride-alongs with all the reps. I'm not coaching them. I'm just getting to know them, uncovering what they do really well, what their strengths are, their challenges. And I'm just putting together a game plan, like what are the things we can kind of apply as a team to make things better. I made 0 changes in my first 30 days intentionally. So then once I started to figure out, okay, cool, like this is what you start to do. And of course, I identified at that point who the red flags on the team. So there are certain people I had to get off the team. So I just knew they're just not a good fit, right? So I started to actually have conversations with them to actually get them to other roles in the company. I'm like, you're a better fit for these other roles. And I would sell them into other roles intentionally. They weren't producing revenue, but what happened was they were a good person, just not a good fit for the sales org. That's all it was. So I'm slowly cleaning house. And at the same time, I'm doing, and I've recruited heavily before, I'm doing 8 to 10 new interviews a week. And because they've been missing the number for years, right? So I'm like, so day one, like I'm analyzing, I'm already starting to recruit. Like I already knew, because I knew how long it takes to build a pipeline up. I'm getting recruiters in place, and I started to slowly get people out, and I'm starting to bring people in, right? So like that first quarter, we ended up doing like 113% to our number, which had never been done in years. They're like, oh my God, what are you doing? Right? Now, granted, I also took over some deals as well. And plus, there was deals from my own pipeline that I basically handed to the rep to my territory that we pushed to close to help with that. But it was part of the long game, right? Because I started to clean house a little bit and put the right things into place, right? But it was a kind of transition over time because I've done turnarounds before. It's like, how can I keep the boat from rocking too much while getting the wrong people off, get the right people on, right? Now, for sure, I probably got some people probably a little bit too long, right? Just because I was trying to reduce turnover down, right? Drastically. We went from like 50% turnover to 0% my first year.
Wow.
Which 0 is actually not good, by the way. I probably should have there was like some desperation of like, I'm like, I know this guy delivers a certain number. He's not a good coach for long term. He's not doing too much damage. I need to keep his team to kind of ease my number. Yeah. Because we have shareholders at the end of the day. I still need to deliver. All right. Yep. So that's kind of how that transition went.
Love it, man. And I, and even when you clean house that fast too, like no matter how you do it, the rest of the team's looking over their shoulder. And
sets a tone. Yeah,
it totally sets a tone.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get into the kind of the topic that we were anchoring on here, which is feedback, right? because as you were going, through this, you obviously had to give some pretty direct feedback, pretty like hard conversations. And I just think right now, I've always been somebody who sought out feedback, who like, I love it when you give me direct feedback, no matter how bad it might hurt, right? It's like, all right, yep, because I can get better here. And I always found that like, if I'm ever defensive about something, it's usually because they're right. You know what I mean? Like, because if you were like, John, you're a fucking raging asshole, you're not authentic, and you try to screw everybody over, like I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Like I'm not even gonna blink on that one. But if you're like, hey John, you have a challenge with accountability and you really need to hold yourself, I'd be like, and if I got defensive on that, it's probably because I fucking know that's my problem. So for me, and sounds like you, like we look for it, right? Yeah, and I think there's the top performers always. Like I use Brady as the perfect, Tom Brady is the perfect example. Like he was the greatest of all time. I'm not even having that conversation with anybody anymore, right? Patrick Mahomes has cheated his way through the referees. That's been proven. Fuck him. Anyways, but he's like, he wants to be coached. He's like, coach me, give me feedback because I got to get better here. I feel like we're in, and I've done some interviews. I've talked to frontline managers, and the feedback, the acceptance of feedback right now is limited. And it feels like an attack on a lot, like, a lot of these kids, and I'm going to be, old man John here, but a lot of these kids feel like, oh, I'm being personally attacked about this. And so how do you coach people and walk that fine line of giving direct feedback in a way that they'll accept? Right? Because you could give the most direct feedback, but right now the subjective component is the rep thinks, oh, my boss doesn't like me. So because I don't think my boss likes me, all this feedback to me is bullshit. And now I'm going to go rat it out to HR because I'm pissed now. And now the manager who gave the feedback is sitting in 5 meetings with HR explaining why they gave direct feedback to a rep's hitting 30% of quota. And like, why the fuck am I here? So the manager then kind of throws their hands up and says, you know what? Yeah, Marcus, you're doing great. You do good job, man. 30%. Hey, that's better than 25%.
Participation trophy for you.
You get
Everybody
it,
wins.
right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't do anybody any favors. I go by, Jack Welch. I worked for him for a couple of months with his radical candor and his, when he was getting his online MBA program off the ground. And everybody gave him shit for being neutron Jack and always, top grading and always firing the bottom 10%. But he said, look, because I asked him about that. I'm like, dude, everybody thinks you're like a fucking, like, you don't always have to fire. He goes, look, let me paint this picture for you. What do you think's worse? What do you think's meaner? Having a direct conversation with somebody. Well, look, he started with the first one. Say you got to give some direct, good, strong feedback to somebody, but you're afraid to. So you give them average feedback, right? You just don't want to deal with it. So year over year, performance review after performance, you're giving average feedback, maybe a little constructive criticism, right? Then all of a sudden the economy tanks, or we got to do layoffs and whatever. And everybody knows that layoffs start from the bottom up, right? Like they're just, okay, the shitty performers, we're going to get all the way up. So now that person gets laid off. And now, so for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you've been telling them that they're pretty good at their job. And now they have this inferiority complex, basically like, wait a minute, I thought I was good at my job. Now what? Versus coming to you, and you even said it, Marcus, you don't suck in general, but you suck at this. And so I'm going to let you go figure out what you're great at. Because I think you can be great at something else. This just isn't it. And you did it by moving people in the organization and whatever it is. But that to me is, being from Boston, being direct, like, fuck yes, I want that, right? Because I want somebody to tell me I suck, even if I think of this. But now I feel like we're not in a world of that's tolerated. So what is your approach to people out there listening of how to provide direct feedback without the emotional component to it and shading it?
So I think the first big challenge I see a lot of times for a lot of leaders trying to give feedback is the trust isn't there. Like when the trust isn't there, you're not going to receive it. You're going to be like, well, no, of course, no, that's not me. You're just being a jackass. I don't trust you, etc. All right. So if we tackle it at its very core, that's the first piece. And I think the mistake a lot of managers make is the trust level is not there. They don't feel psychologically safe. But then second, on top of that, it's usually very reactive. It's always reactive. And it's like, it's a build of all these things. And then finally there's a conversation. And they're like, You haven't said anything for the last 6 months, and now you're saying, oh, I'm a bad rep? What are you
That's
talking
like the performance review, right? Like the worst thing, if a rep goes into a performance review and is surprised about anything, you're an asshole manager.
100%, 100%. So one of the things, that I do that's really helped me over the years is when I take over a team, or if I'm hiring someone new, the very first thing you do is an individual development plan. So it's really it's a physical document that they type in, they fill out, they write in what are their big personal goals. So not their company goals, what's their personal goals? So they say, I want to buy a new house, and here's why. I want to retire my spouse, I want to send my kids to private school, whatever it's going to be. Also on there, it's like, how best do you like to be led? So then you really think, what does that even mean? So then you kind of fill it out. But also another question is, how best do you like to receive feedback? And my goal here is, it's not that they fill all the answers. They type in what they believe is in there, and then we sit down, we have an IDP meeting, and we talk about it. And usually the feedback, like, hey, that's an interesting question. No one's ever asked me that. I guess, I like to hear feedback. They all kind of say that. I'm like, totally get that. Now, I'm a pretty direct guy, and that can be offensive for some people. So how best do you like to receive feedback? Do you like it direct? Do you need a little bit of build up first? And how can I best give you feedback in a way you can be most open to receiving it? So what's happening is, in like literally week 1, I'm already planting the seed that I'm going to coach and guide you and help you get to your personal goals you want to get to and why it's important to you. But I'm hopefully going to do it in a way that you ideally like. Because some people say, yeah, actually, you know what? You can tell it to me straight. You tell it for my peers. I actually like that because my peers here, it actually makes me like, actually do it. So it's interesting what you hear. So that's the first step is like, we start with that. So we're already planting the seeds of trust from there. All right. And then as a leader, what I've always done as well is I'm consistently giving feedback all throughout, but I'm not just giving feedback to change a behavior. It's also feedback to encourage what I want to see continue to happen. So for instance, you have a brand new hire and you say, I want you to prepare a list of your tier 1 accounts. I want you to do a little bit of research. So come Monday for the 2-hour call block, I want you to be ready to go. And then on Monday, when you inspect what you expect, and they did a great job with that, hey, John, I just want to tell you, this is the best I've ever seen someone prepare for this list. How did you go about doing that? Well, I used Apollo, I used LinkedIn, I used Perplexity, I did this, and this. That's amazing. Great job with that. So I'm recognizing that behavior. Okay. So I'm not doing some sandwich technique. I'm recognizing behavior when I already want to see it. All right. So what happens is trust is like a bank account. These are little deposits I'm making up front. So when I do a withdrawal, I've earned the right to give them a withdrawal because it's already built up. All right. So that's the first thing. So it has to be consistent because consistency is what compounds over time, and they trust you over time. You can talk a big game all you want, but if you're inconsistent with it, it doesn't really matter. So number one, you be really consistent with that. Now, the second piece is when you actually give them the feedback, and I got this feedback, a long time ago, and it's been great, which is a boss told me, Marcus, when you give feedback to anybody, think of the triple T's. What's your tact? What's your tone? What's your timing? What's your tact? What's your tone? What's your timing? And that's been really, really impactful. And then I also bridge in the concept from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek to understand first. So let's just say, for example, you see an undesirable behavior out of your employee, right? So I'll give you an example. I had a brand new hire, and she was older than me at the time. Like she was probably like 15 years older than me, brand new. She's been an amazing hire, for first day, and I'm a stickler for like time and stuff like that. She's late. Okay. I don't call her out in front of everybody because I made that mistake before. So later I pull her aside and say, hey, Lisa, can we have a quick chat? And she's kind of like, oh God, I could tell. And I said, hey, I noticed today that, and I'm being stuck. I don't know her style enough. We had an IDP. I'm like, I have to address this. I don't like things to build up. So I'm like, can you help me understand, what happened this morning? I'm trying to say, is she even aware that, is it awareness thing? And she's like, yeah, I know, I was late today. I'm like, totally get that. Can you help me understand what happened? So I'm just seeking to understand. My tone is suck. I'm trying to gauge. She's like, well, it's no excuse. Like, I really just didn't anticipate the morning traffic crossing the bridge over here. Like it's backed up traffic. I just had no idea. And actually, I'm really embarrassed about this. I'm like, okay, totally get that. So moving forward, what are you probably going to do? Because obviously the traffic's not going to change. And she's like, moving forward, I'm just going to leave 30 minutes early. I'm like, okay, cool. Awesome. Perfect. Just want to make sure. And she's like, good. That's it. And that was the last time we had a conversation. Later that week, she pulled me aside and she's like, I just want to tell you, that was really interesting what you did. I'm like, well, what was that? She's like, I already forgot the conversation. She's like, on Monday, I was late. And I've had bosses that's happened and they just ream me day one. They're just make me feel small and feel terrible. You actually pulled me aside and you just sought to understand and I completely got it. And I'll never be late. I just want to tell you, I really appreciate you doing that. So that was a good example because we didn't have the trust even quite there yet, but my approach I was just gauging it consistently, right? I was gauging the situation and adjusting accordingly. But when you think about any type of tough conversation, tact, tone, and timing, sometimes the timing has to be a little bit later because of the situation, or how I need to adjust my tone, or the tact, or how I do it, because I need to make sure they internalize the message. It's not just giving feedback to give feedback. It's how can I give feedback that's going to change the behavior for the better.
That's the key, right? And I think when you talked earlier, I think it goes back to also expectation setting. Right? Like if I'm not expecting bad feedback and I get it, I'm going to be defensive about it.
100%.
And even if I'm late, because I have a pet peeve about being late. I expect you to be on time. And when you're not, like I get pretty fucking pissed because I just think all you have to do. And by the way, I don't care that you're late. I care that you didn't text me 10 minutes earlier to tell me that you were going to be late. That's like that. And look, we all fuck up. We all oversleep. We all do this, but don't bullshit a bullshitter here. And so, but again, I've learned in my career where it's like, I'm all pissed off. You're on like, that's one of my fucking things. And it's like, well, yeah, my kid was sick. This was sick. It's the same thing actually when I do it. And you and I both coach on outbound and prospecting. And it's amazing to me how pissed off reps get when clients don't respond to them after certain things, right? It's like, what the fuck? Like, why haven't you, and you can watch, if you watch their emails, they get progressively more aggressive. Like, why, ghosting and all that other stuff. And I tell people, I go, look, on the cold call side of the house, first of all, that's not their problem. That's yours. Okay. But when somebody engages with you and you have a good conversation and there's a next step, and I tell reps, I'm like, look, I beg you right now to lead with empathy.
That's it.
Because maybe before, whatever, but now how fucked up things are out there right now, you have no idea what people are going through. And I vividly remember being like really annoyed at a client one time for ghosting me in a contract that I was expecting to come in. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And I ripped him apart on this email as like professional courtesy and everything else. And he literally was like, John, sorry, my daughter's been in the hospital for the past week. And when I say that punched me in the gut so hard, I felt it. You know what I mean? I was and this was before I even had a daughter. And I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, John, you're not the most important person on the fucking planet. Like, I think you need to tone this down a little bit. And so now every single time, if somebody ghosts me, I literally say, hey, Marcus, man, I haven't heard from you in a little while. I really hope everything's okay. And so I lead there and say, you had said timelines, priorities, those type of things. Let me know if this is in jeopardy or not, because whatever you're going through, because I just want to know how to communicate with you more effectively moving forward. That approach, that empathetic, whatever, has got me a 10 times higher response rate than me being like professional courtesy. What the fuck? Why didn't you get back to me? Type of shit.
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, I've said it before. I think life is about expectation setting.
Oh, 100%. I think it's like, you were in copy sales, so you probably also did door to door, right? So how many times would you walk in and the gatekeeper is like just super rude and super unhappy, right? Yeah. And it used to really bother me. I'd be like, oh my God, they're such a jerk. What a bitch, blah, 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 whatever, right? But and then I start to reframe the questions. I'm like, well, think about it for a second. Okay. Majority of people that call in are probably salespeople who are not great, customer complaints. They're one of the lowest roles. They're constantly busy and they never have to take breaks. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be happy in that job either. So what if I walked in and maybe if I could be the best part of their day, be the most enjoyable conversation, maybe that'll make that easier for me. And that shift for me personally was like, wow, I'm going to go in now and be like the best, the best possible, light of that person's day.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I posted something recently. I saw this quote that I thought was really interesting is, judgment. We all judge, right? And we all think that everybody's thinking about us. Right. So it's like, and I see this in my daughter, right? 14 years old. She's like, oh my God, they're talking about my sweetheart. They're not talking about you. They're thinking that you're talking about them. Right. And what you're doing there is actually, you you're actually insulting the person because you're putting this perception that they are a negative person and thinking negative about you. So you not only are you taking that from like internally, which you can't control in any way, shape, or form, and you shouldn't anyways, but you're actually assuming bad intent from that person because and so you just assume good intent, right? Like assume somebody's not trying to screw you over. Assume somebody is having a shitty day because they've been beat up by everybody else, and it's not personal because 99% of the time it ain't. And I think that's where a lot of more people have to have that mentality these days, or else it's just going to keep getting worse.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like that's why I think Stoicism is so powerful. One of the most powerful Stoic principles is nothing has any meaning except for the meaning you give it. So if you're like, that's just a thing that happened, it has zero meaning, right? Like, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like, and this applies to even the most like drastic situations, right? Like if today, if our kids passed away, obviously we'd be devastated, right? But you go back, say 1,000 years and your kid passed away, they're like, that was kind of what happens. You're like, it's a gamble because you're just trying to survive, right? Like the meaning becomes it's the same thing, but time has shifted the meaning. So I think, for people listening out there, it's like, hey, in the situation you're in, how can you create zero meaning out of the situation or create a positive meaning for yourself? And you can learn far more from that.
Love that, man. So what's got you fired up moving forward here? I mean, we're in this weird spot right now, at least from my standpoint. I graduated in 98. I saw the crash in 2000. I saw 2007. I thought that, I fell apart in 2023 for me, COVID and all this other stuff. But this feels different, man. This AI stuff feels different. And I think there's the optimistic and the pessimistic side of the house on this one, right? The Terminator, we're all going to be fucking screwed, or like, hey, we're going to live in this utopia world. And I just believe we're all in a legacy system, right? Whether it's a legacy sales system, a legacy environments, whatever. And we're transitioning, but nobody knows what the future is. So two things. One is, what are you excited about? And two is, how are you helping the people that you coach and train prepare for a future that is unknown?
What a great question. And I think at the end of the day, you and I, we can't predict the future. Otherwise, it'd be very different. Our bank accounts probably look very, very different.
I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be friggin', I wouldn't even be close to do it. I like the podcast, so I'd probably still be doing the podcast. But I'd probably do nothing.
I might just disappear. You might never hear from me ever again. So when I think about it, it's like, okay, cool. So all we can really bet on is really, our attitudes and our actions. That's really it, right? And we can make strategic bets. So for instance, we know AI is here to stay, and we don't know the future. It for sure could be a Terminator situation. It could be a utopian situation. Again, we don't really know. All I know is, hey, how can we go about having a growth mindset towards it, right? Because on the opposite, you have a fixed mindset, which is like, it's doom and gloom. Oh my gosh, whatever. We're screwed. Or you can have a growth mindset, like, hey, how can I just embrace it as a mental model? So, and it's interesting because I have some friends like, oh, I'm going to try to build my own AI. I'm like, you could. That's amazing. But can you beat OpenAI? Are you going to be able to beat Google with what you have to build? Like, I'm just saying, do you have the resources, the talent, the network to get to that point? You can. It's up to you if you want to do that. But I'm like, instead, I'm just going to leverage a tool to help me in any way I can. So, as different tools come out, I think the best way we can become is just be like scientists with it. Is literally experiment and toy and really embrace it. So for instance, for, a lot of my clients, like we're just leveraging the ones that's already available, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude. And it's like using, hey, how can we make our jobs easier, better, more efficient? Whether it's from account research to making an email more concise to doing anything that you want to do. And as new tools come out, you learn about new use cases, try it yourself. Don't just say that's not going to work. Say, hey, that's a really interesting concept. How can I utilize this to make it easier and better for myself? And when you start thinking that way, it doesn't really matter what the future holds, because then fast forward 2 years, if the roles completely shift, you're thinking, hey, how can I adapt myself to get to this point? While most people are going to be stuck in the fixed mindset. And I believe most people are stuck in the fixed mindset. So if you want to get ahead, it's not about trying to create the next AI, unless you happen to be a genius, which would be amazing. If you're like me, just a very average dude who works really hard, just be curious.
Just be curious.
Have fun, learn, try stuff out, invest on your own. If your company doesn't pay for it, go out and pay for Claude, pay for the subscription, just test it and see what you like. And you might build something cool with it. Worst case, you learn a new way of thinking that's going to help you down the road.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that curiosity and agility and adaptability, those are the skills of the future. I mean, when I coach my corporate clients, I encourage them. I'm like, turn your sales org into a sales lab. And every Friday, ideally once a week, pizza, beer, Friday afternoon, get the whole GTM crew together here and break up into teams like 3 to 5 people. Right. And put, the young reps in with the senior reps in. So business acumen versus tech savviness, throw a couple of SEs in there for prompting and stuff like that. Throw the marketers in there and then kind of like engineers, right? You know how engineers have hackathons?
Oh yeah.
They pick something, they nerd out on it for a little while. Well, I think we should do the same in sales now. Is like pick any aspect of the sales process. I don't give a fuck what it is. And give a framework so it's not just all over the place. Be like, hey, here's the problem we're trying to solve, or here's the thing we're trying to make more efficient, whatever it is. Whoever in the next hour can figure out a better solution than what we're doing now wins. And so then they nerd out on it for a little while. They collaborate, they learn, right? Whatever. And then everybody presents what their solution is. And at the end, we all vote to say, okay, well, which one do we like best? Great, like that one. Cool. Let's implement that next week and see if it works. And then iterate and keep doing that, because now you're using the bottom up approach to decision making. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know any executive right now, top down, about making decisions specifically related to AI. I think that's a fool's errand, because by the time you identify the problem, you evaluate vendors, you make the decision, you're 6 to 9 months out of any implementation. And I don't know about you, I have no fucking idea what's going to be 6 months from now.
It's exactly right.
Getting them to build into it is the way that you gotta shift that mentality.
And I think there's 2 key points, right? I think number one is, as a leader, you have to create the environment for people to do it. So that's a perfect example, like the sales AI-a-thon, if you will. I think also number 2, it's also leading from the front and showing them, hey, what you're testing out as well. If, for example, it's like, let's just say you're not using an AI transcription tool, or for your call recorders, right? For your calls, you get one, and they say, hey, listen, team, take a look at this in your next meeting. Look at what I did. I actually took the call, I took the transcription, I create a really simple prompt. It says, hey, we use MEDIC at our company. We use MEDIC. Rate my call, against MEDIC, and how can we do a better job next time? And what are the gaps? And what should I do next to drive up my win rate? Also, give me a probability, and show them so that they see you also doing it, right? And you'll learn some things. It'll make you better. It'll get you thinking right, and then they'll see it too. And you'll have some people that are going to take off of that, right? And they're going to do it too. But you have to create that culture, then lead from the front, as being a forward thinker versus sitting back and kind of hoping the team's going to, bring some idea to the table.
And going back to controlling it a little bit too, because everybody's fucking around with it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some reps are going deep into it. Others are kind of like whatever. So it's all over, and nobody knows how, like very few reps know, even especially the senior ones, even what to ask, which blows me away with AI, because all I say is just say, I don't know what to ask. What should I be asking? But regardless, giving them a structure to it, whether it's, and I tell reps, like senior reps, I'm like, because they're like, there's so many things. I go, look, put 30 minutes a day on your calendar. And then like either at lunch or in the morning as your morning routine, 30 minutes. And that's your fuck around with AI 30 minutes. Right. But limit it to 30 minutes. So you don't, cause I don't know about you, man. I've like, all of a sudden I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't mean like physically wake up. I mean, I kind of get out of the zone. I'm like, holy shit, I've been drowning in AI for the past 5 hours here, and I haven't really done anything. So you do need to control it a little bit, but man, it is such a superpower. If going back to what you said, is if you're curious, if you give a shit, if you want to learn, but if you're looking at it for the answer, I think you're just screaming to be replaced.
Well, I think what's really interesting is and I think those who start to internalize it, how can I use it in my day-to-day life?
Yeah.
Right? Like, for really, like, for anything, for instance, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I use it all the time for like literally anything and everything. It's like, I'm going to switch like solo 401k providers. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a whole thing. It's going to be all these steps. So I'm like, hey, Claude, like, what's the simplest and easiest way to transfer over my 401k? What should I be on the lookout for? Very simple plan. I'm like, that makes sense. Okay. Are we missing anything here? But here's the thing. It's not just taking that data. I'm thinking like logic, critical thinking. I'm like, does this actually make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Like, I'm going to think about it. I'm like, okay, actually, this doesn't seem to make sense in this step. Like, are you sure? Well, actually, now as you ask, you should actually do it this way. I'm like, okay, cool. But we're using it as a tool, and we're being curious with it. Right. and it's doing it now versus waiting 2-3 years later. So we can hopefully be the forerunner of whatever AI is at the table at that point.
And I think that's the best way to learn this stuff is to be curious, but also like create, right? Create your own GPT. Create, like, I just, right before we were on this phone, my daughters she has some stomach issues and it's been weird. She's starting like, and we can't figure it out. And, doctor, I got to wait a week to schedule a fucking appointment and all this other shit. And so I created a GPT that I want you to be the best nutritionist, the best doctor for gut issues. I want to create it for my daughter. She's going to input her food and I need you to tell her, like, she's kicked out this killer ass prompt, took that, put it over there, tweaked it up a little bit. And now I got an app for my daughter that all I want her to do is whenever she eats something, just say, this is what I ate. And then tell her, an hour later, how do I feel? And then we're going to distill this down into a diet that she can use. And no doctor would ever be able to do that in a timely fashion.
Oh, 100%.
And so like going through the process of being curious, then saying, okay, how do I do this? Teaches you more about this stuff than 95% of the people on the planet.
And I think you have to just like make it part of your life. Like, and you can appreciate because, obviously you got kids and so do I, but like, I like one kid and, he's 8 now, but for last couple of years, once AI started getting kind of this thing, I've been showing how to use AI. So like, we'll go and we'll write whole stories. Like act as a world-class storyteller. I'm like, make the main character Roman Chan. He's half Persian, half Chinese. He loves magic tricks. He loves chess. And like, I'll give all these details about his life and like, write me a story in the Super Mario Brothers 3 storyline and have all the characters inside there, have a moral story be this. So we'll do these things together, right? And then it'll create this like hilarious story, which is like funnier than something I would write. But he sees, he's like, oh, and then he'll sit there and he'll reprompt it, right? Because he's like, oh, add in this character because they didn't do this. Add this in, change this, make this part funnier, right? So I think if we start getting the mindset now, that's gonna be far better. But it's also, how do you integrate into part of your life? It's not going away.
No,
so embrace it and make it part of who you are.
Yeah, and I think what's more important now, I quite frankly, I think IQ is over. I really do. It's already smarter than us. So doubling down on EQ is all those liberal arts degrees that everybody used to make fun of. Like, no, now those are coming back in vogue because it's like, sorry coders, you're fucked. Sorry lawyers, you're fucked. Hey, liberal arts, you get to understand sociology and how people work and psychology and all that stuff. Like, you're going to be the winners moving forward because human interaction, human connection, those type of things are what's going to matter more than anything, I think, moving forward.
And I think one other thing to add to that as well, right, is like, so if you have the EQ, if you also have what I call AQ, the adaptability quotient, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you're able to adapt as the tool changes over time and what's available. Because, we'll get to a point where it's around us at all times. It's just it's like Jarvis and Iron Man. That's how it is. Like
whether it's a chip in our head or the phone in our hand or the glasses,
it will still be on us some way, shape or form.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, we could go down the rabbit hole of Terminator, but let's wrap this one up, Marcus. What are you working on? What do you want people to know? I know you're going in on corporate these days, but talk to the audience where you want them to show.
100%, right? So it's been an absolute pleasure, right? So now we work directly with, corporations, usually there are between 25, 50 mil, at least 25 plus AEs. And we first do a diagnostic where we do a deep dive into their situation, analyze all their sales data, interview a bunch of reps, leaders. We analyze all their data, we take a look at all the conversations as well, plus call recordings, and we uncover like the biggest leaks in their organization. So we actually work on fixing that first, right? So instead of just coming in this training, we're figuring out, hey, what's the biggest gaps? And how can I actually help you with the gaps when you do it internally or externally? And what's really interesting is, half the time or half the challenges are actually internal based. You got to fix first, right? Before we can actually implement some of the back end stuff too. But it's been a lot of fun. So hit me up on LinkedIn or head to venliconsulting.com to learn more about it.
Love it, man. Hey, just out of curious, like how many people are tolerant to go through that, right? Because there's the quick fix training, and then there's the way to do it right, which is assess, plan, execute. But so many people in this space are quick fix. I just need some training to train my team. So how often do you find people being like, that sounds great, Marcus, but no fucking way we're going to do that. I just need something here.
It depends on how sharp the leader is, to be quite frank.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right. So like the really sharp leaders, they understand like a good doctor diagnoses first. And they're like 100%. This is what we have to do first. And there's some for sure. They're like, we want the quick fix. We have some budget to burn, and that's kind of like they just want like a training, etc. Right? Which is like we try to like not do those, right? Because it's like we know long term wise they won't get the results they actually want, because they're looking for an SKO or a speaking thing. It's like, okay, now if we can try to piggyback where we do that first to build, if that's the entry offer to build trust with them, that we can do like maybe a bigger term engagement, that has happened too, which has been cool, right? But if we can do a diagnostic first, solve the right core issues from the get-go, that can just save them like literally dividends on the back end, because obviously we're solving systemic issues versus putting a Band-Aid on stuff that, it's not going to be held accountable, not going to be put in place long-term wise because they have bad managers.
Yep. That's the problem, my friend, is these days that I don't know if, too many people are willing to put in the work, the real work of what it takes to kind of like fix that foundation before
100%.
they build on top of it. And it's a house of cards, right? So
that's exactly, we see it far too often, unfortunately.
I know. There's a couple of clients that I'm working with right now that I'm just like, I'm like forcing myself on them to do the reinforcement. I'm dumbing it down to the point where I'm like, look, all you have to do is take this sequence that I created based on this and put it into Outreach or put it into Sales Loft, have reps identify 20 accounts that they want to go after and click a fucking button. Like literally, that's all I need you to do. And the amount of pushback I get from it is off the charts. It's like, well, it's a really, really busy quarter. And I'm like, this is doing your fucking job. Like, how do I?
Oh yeah.
And it's the whole proverbial
short-term thinker, right? Because it's like, they're not thinking of 2026 in their pipeline now, right? Like they're just thinking like right now, it's like, yeah, it's fine. But you have, it's a 180 to 360 day sales cycle for you guys. So you don't have no pipeline in 2026. What are you going to do? You're robbing your future self by not putting these things in place now.
All right, well, let's keep fighting the good fight, my friend, for the people that care, right?
That's it, exactly.
Awesome, Marcus. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's been great chat with you. And let's make sure that we connect here sometime soon outside of, I don't know if I'm doing the big conferences this year. I think I'm a little tapped out on the big boys, but hopefully we can find some cool stuff. Wait, actually, where are you based out of again?
Portland, Oregon. I'm
Portland. Okay, so you're still there. Yeah. Yep, you're still there. Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. Let me know if you're ever traveling on the East Coast. New York. I do a couple of things back and forth now a few times. So if you're ever in New York, but let's make sure that we stay connected again.
Sounds good, brother. Always a pleasure.
Always, my friend. Everybody, hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And like I say at the end of all these podcasts, go out there and make somebody smile today. Because no matter how bad your day's going or how bad you think it went, if you make somebody smile, you had a good day, and the world needs a lot more of that right now. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the other side.